Good evening, New Jersey. John Cifelli here with Weather NJ, and for the second straight year, I'm broadcasting to you in October. And most of you know me as primarily a winter weather forecaster, so you know something's up, and I'm sure you heard it by now. We have Frankencane to deal with. Last year it was Snowmageddon as we approached Halloween, and now it's the Frankencane, which I think is a name that is no longer quite as applicable, at least not here in New Jersey, as it was being given that label because of its possibility of bringing winter weather as well as being a tropical system. And here in New Jersey, I think it's going to be the tropical stuff that we have to deal with. And a lot of it is a very serious weather situation beginning to unfold. Not very often that we have the threat of a hurricane completely bending and basically turning its track towards New Jersey and back towards the Atlantic seaboard after already making a curve out to sea. But I'll show you the suggested track right now, and that is exactly what it looks to be. So this is Hurricane Sandy. It's moved across Hispaniola and is now just north of the Bahamas, east of Florida, and it will continue on that northerly path for the next day or so as it moves into the western Atlantic, and it will basically parallel the eastern seaboard. Right now, maximum sustained winds are 90 miles an hour, and as we look at the infrared satellite, we do see some peaks of the white, which is the coolest cloud tops, towards the center of the storm. We don't see an eye here, and in fact the circulation or the coolest cloud tops aren't exactly symmetrical around the circulation, but you see a flare up here on the eastern side towards the end of the loop, so perhaps a little bit of intensification for Sandy before she moves north into some cooler waters. We are now approaching November, and the peak tropical season has already passed, about 4 weeks behind us, so a little bit more difficult for tropical systems to sustain and increase their strength as they move into higher latitudes. The National Hurricane Center official forecast is actually for a little bit of a bend to the west, before a bend back to the east, and then an eventual bend back to the west. So a pretty dynamic situation going on aloft where the steering currents are, or actually a pretty benign pattern, exactly where Sandy is until she eventually gets picked up and moved back to the west. And I'll show you why that's going to happen in just a quick second. The official forecast is for landfall to be anywhere from northern North Carolina all the way to Massachusetts, so plenty of wiggle room left for this one, and where exactly Sandy is going to land remains yet to be seen. I said in the email that I'm expecting it to be around Cape May at this point. The European model, which was the most bullish on the western curve right now for reference, is suggesting that Sandy will make landfall somewhere in the southern Delmarva Peninsula or towards the Barnegat Bay. So, why the bend to the west? Well, I've talked in the past about the North Atlantic Oscillation, which is basically an index that tells us how strong the ridging or troughing is over the far northwestern Atlantic in Greenland, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, this part of the northern hemisphere. And when the NAO is negative, you have strong ridging in those places. And for winter weather forecasting, when you're trying to figure out if a storm is going to go out to sea or back west, perhaps over land, the NAO is a feature that you sort of look to for some guidance. And we see the black line being the actual NAO and the red cluster being a group of forecasts for the NAO. And so we do see a negative trend, which suggests that we will see some ridging building over the northwest Atlantic, and that would only help to push Sandy back towards the west. This is the GFS, and as we take a quick peek of where we were, come on, where are we going here? Well, let's go to the beginning. Very good place to start. At least that's what Julie Andrews always said. And as we see Sandy down here, just east of Florida, we have a cutoff low over the western Atlantic. This is Maine if it's a little difficult to see. New Jersey's right here. And here is a large trough over the central United States. And the progression at this latitude is for things to blow west to east, and that's definitely true for hurricanes as well. As they move into northern latitudes, they tend to curve away from the United States. And as we go out in time, this cutoff low begins to sag to the south. This trough is moving to the east as it should, and it looks like Sandy has a clear path in between the two and would pretty much shoot the gap and would move southwest to northeast. And that would be all good and well if this trough continued to move west, and if we didn't have the eventual emergence. Keep your eye right here, just northeast of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and what you see is a ridge begin to develop and build and this acts as just basically a large blocking mechanism, and Sandy now has no exit, nowhere to go north and to the east, which is the natural path for these things. Meanwhile, the trough is beginning to turn negative. You see a northwest to a southeast orientation, and this acts to capture and draw the tropical system back to the west as we go out in time. And in fact, the 500 millibar low comes right over New Jersey. Can't get more of a direct hit than that. And as we go out further in time, the 500 millibar low sits over Pennsylvania and New Jersey and sits and spins and just winds itself down before eventually, thankfully, here a week later, moving off to the north and east. And just because the 500 millibar low sits for several days doesn't mean that we're going to get torrential rains and tropical rains for days and days, as the storm will basically wind itself out and run out of moisture at this high of latitude. So this basically is a map showing all the different tropical computer models that forecasters have at their disposal. And again, they suggest anywhere from Virginia or the North Carolina-Virginia border all the way up to southern New England are potential risk spots for landfall, with New Jersey being in the crosshairs. So we're looking down the barrel of the gun for this thing, and it doesn't look like we have much wiggle room left if we want to see this continue out to sea. We're running out of time here very, very quickly. And if this thing does come west, as it's now forecasted to do, here's two different projections of two different runs of the GFS. Total rainfall, anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of rain. The white and the gray is 6-7 inches of rain. So South Jersey right now, if the GFS were taken verbatim, we'd be looking at up to a half foot of rain. Unfortunately, I think that the thing we need to worry about is that we could actually see more than that as the storm does sit and spin and just wind itself out and basically wring out all that tropical moisture over us right here in New Jersey. So I think a very serious situation. The fact that the leaves are still in the trees kind of rings a bell when you think back to Halloween last year, and the fact that we had all those winds, and with the leaves on the trees, it's basically acting like a big fan. It just sort of catches the wind, and I expect a lot of limbs down. We could have widespread power outages, and I think that the usual places that flood are definitely going to see it, and even some places that usually don't. So make sure that you have a generator. Make sure that everything is in order, and perhaps your summertime lawn furniture, if you didn't get it in the garage yet, really good time to do it. So I'll have an update in the next couple of days. It's homecoming for Rutgers on Saturday, so I don't know if you'll hear from me then, but definitely want to stay tuned and keep an eye on this thing, as it will be a very big deal here